Ladies and gentlemen, it is a new era. Fight Society podcast is, I'll say back at you, but it's a new evolution of this. It's Loper and Damon Martin here. We're going to talk some mixed martial arts today, of course, and we're going to talk about the status of the show and like what the show is now, and there's been a little bit of a shake-up in your life, Damon. So, let's just get it out of the way, man. Let's just talk about it, get out in the open, and then we'll get to the show here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a lot of people know on Twitter, I announced that this week I'm no longer at Fox Sports. They've made some staffing changes. I'm sure everyone's seen the articles out there. It's not like I need to rehash it here. They're going to more video and no written content. So the writers on the staff pretty much all got let go. And so that happened this week. So
is that just like an MMA?
No. It's across the board. I mean,
whoa.
So it's not just me.
I've been telling everybody it was just like
no. It's I think about 25 people ended up. Yeah.
So like we don't need to read anything about sports. We're going to watch it now.
Yeah, it's all like everybody. So NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, football, soccer, NASCAR, everybody. So it's not just me. I certainly appreciate the sentiment if the people thought it was just me, but it's not just me. So Awful Announcing did a whole article on it, like the whole direction, and they had a lot of information stuff, which is funny stuff even I don't know because I've worked remotely. I don't work out of the office. Like I'm not in LA. So like a lot of the stuff that was happening behind the scenes, even I didn't know about.
Hey, Colin Cowherd.
Yeah, like I'm not hanging out of the studio. So there's a lot of stuff that happened that even I didn't know about because I don't work in the office. So they did a story over there about it. But yeah, so I'm no longer at Fox Sports. Going to be doing some freelance stuff here and there, and obviously I still want to do the podcast. So we're going to revamp this and continue to kick ass doing this and interview guests and still kind of do our thing here. And I'm sure, hopefully, eventually, I'll catch on somewhere else and do some writing and continue to break news and interviews and things like that and written content because that's what I do best. But so this is kind of a 2.0 version of Fight Society with myself and Loper back at it after we did the great MMA debate and, briefly legit man shit and all the other stuff we did. So now this is like a permanent gig. We're going to do this weekly. We're not going to skip dates. We're not going to skip around. We're going to continue to do this as often as possible.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot of people that have been asking about Coleman, and I kind of want to put this out there, Mark Coleman. If you follow me on Twitter at Jeremy Loper, or if you friend my show on Facebook, Loper and Randy in the morning, you can check it out. We put up a post for Coleman. There's a GoFundMe right now. I think it's a GoFundMe. It's one of those basically FundMe websites where he's having another surgery. It's both hips. So, it's rebuild the legend. Yeah. And, and if you're in the position to give, they're doing that for Mark Coleman. I think Wes Sims started it, but, I'm trying to get the word out there. He's a good friend of ours and, he's a great person, man, a very important person in mixed martial arts.
Absolutely. And, I know Mark has had a lot of issues with his hips since fighting, I think he had 2 hip replacements already, right?
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate. Yeah, absolutely. Support Coley. I actually heard from Coley on Twitter the other day after my Fox News came out. He hit me up on there. So yeah, anything you can do to support the legend, please do so. I know he's had some issues with his hips for a lot of years. So, it's a problem. I know my former co-host and good friend of mine from MMA Weekly, Jeff Kane, he has a hip replacement. He's talked about that very openly. Like, it's something it's not a kind of thing you just fix and move on. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that will
it's new in life now.
Yeah, it's like a something that will kind of hamper you forever and could eventually be replaced, and then you may have to do the other hip. And so there's a lot that goes into it.
So I'm hearing things. I'm looking at your Twitter. Robbie Lawler, Cowboy Cerrone, UFC 213. What's happening here, man?
Yeah, so the fight is almost certainly off UFC 213. From what I've heard, it's pretty much a done deal. It's not going to happen at UFC 213. Right now, they're looking at rescheduling it for UFC 214. It's a minor injury for Cowboy, is what I've been told, and they're going to.
Oh, it's on Cowboy side.
It's on Cowboy side.
Robbie
yeah,
was
so it's on Cowboy side. Minor injury. And they're talking about rescheduling it for UFC 214 a few weeks later. But as of right now, it's not a done deal. They want it for that date, but it's not a done deal yet. Like,
must be something serious because Cowboys fought hurt a bunch.
Yeah, it's I've heard some details. I don't want to say anything yet as far as because I just heard some rumors about what it may be. But it's not something that's so serious that he couldn't fight in a few weeks, but it all depends on being cleared by the doctors. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. You know what I mean? Like, basically from what I've been told is what it is like there's just no way he can get cleared in time to fight next week. But he could get cleared in time to fight in 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So, it's nothing serious. And from what I've heard, he had a great camp. You know what I mean? Had a great training camp.
Who has more fucking fun than that guy?
Yeah.
I mean,
so,
look at that guy's Instagram.
Yeah.
Who's having more fun than Donald Cerrone?
I know, sir.
Man.
You look at his Twitter, his Instagram and stuff. It's like, he does all the fun things you wish you could do.
Yeah, Dan Bilzerian, who, Cowboy Cerrone's having the most fun, dude. He's out jet skiing with hot chicks. Yeah, he got the ranch.
Yeah, he loves it. And then he just trains and fights and makes money. So, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because that was a great fight. And I'll be honest, this is not me trying to take a dig on it, but UFC 213, man, that card, it's still good. It's not a bad card.
So who do we have left? It's,
we got Shevchenko and Nunes. We got Romero and Whitaker, which is a fun fight.
That's ridiculous.
You got Verdum Overeem again, and then you got Pettis and Anthony Pettis and Jim Miller on the main card.
How crazy is Verdum and Overeem? Buried, almost as an afterthought.
Well, it's because it's the third time. Well, if you remember the second fight, you know why it's buried. It was a terrible fight.
I know, but usually there's not very many heavyweight fights. Even,
no, and there's a lot with Verdum. I know he's had some contract issues with the UFC, and he's had some other things. They've thrown him under the bus a couple of times when he hasn't stepped up and taken fights that they've offered him and stuff like that.
Well, that shit in Cleveland too.
He had that, and that's when he beat Travis Brown, and it was, so, don't get me wrong, I like the fight, but I think, to me, the reason it's slipping under the radar is because the second fight was so bad in Strikeforce, you remember that? Where basically Verdum kept falling to his back, and Overeem basically kicked his legs for 3 rounds. I think it's almost like, let's just hope people watch this for the guys they are now, and we don't really bring up the other fight. You know what I mean? Because no one really. So
you think Verdum's confident to stand up with Overeem this time?
Probably more than he was before, but that's still a dangerous game to play. Overeem's nasty, man. Look what he did to Mark Hunt. So that's not an easy prospect. So
by the way, Mark Hunt donated $5,000 to Coleman.
Really? Yeah. That's awesome.
I mean, just to tell you what kind of guy Mark Hunt is.
That's awesome.
I mean, really does tell you a character of a warrior who looks at that and goes, you know what, man, a couple years removed, that could be me.
Yeah.
And Coleman, pioneer, dude. And, a guy like Mark Hunt, I think that's a gentleman's move right there.
Yeah, I agree. That's tremendous. I've seen a couple other fighters do things like that. I think for the last one, I know Coleman had some stuff going on. I think I saw Carlos Condit and a couple other fighters had done that, which is awesome. It's pay it forward to the legends.
It is, man. And that's, it's too bad that there's not a bigger organization with big pockets that could maybe help.
Well, and we've had this discussion, not to get too far off topic, but I think that's something that has to happen in the future. Everyone talks about the unions and things with fighting. I still think that a union in MMA is far off from ever actually succeeding. There's just too many oars in the water to actually get it to work, because you got UFC, you got Bellator, you got World Series of Fight. It's just like boxing. You know what I mean? It's not as easy as when you got the NBA. And yes, there's 30 teams, but the NBA is still the overruling governing body of all 30 teams. There's not that in MMA. If you start a union, now your collective bargaining has to go with Bellator, has to go with UFC. It's just a weird, I don't think it will ever work, or it's not going to work anytime soon. But the one thing I think with the union that you absolutely should get going, or something needs to be done, is, provisions for guys who have fought, whether that just means some sort of pension or some sort, at least medical bills. You know what I mean? Right. Guys who are dealing with injuries later in their career, who are dealing with injuries that happened during their career. You know what I mean? And Coleman's in a tough spot because he fought in the UFC, fought in Pride. Who's responsible for that? You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing I wish, for the sake of the fighters, whether we're talking about Coleman or we're talking about I don't know all the stories, but I'm quite sure there are a lot of other fighters that are out there dealing with injuries now that started when they were fighting in the 90s or whatever.
No doubt. And so we were talking about Verdum beating Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
And, Overeem.
Overeem beating Mark Hunt, yeah.
Yeah, so the tremendous victory, but it makes that fight even more exciting. So hopefully that fight is better than the one in Strikeforce for sure.
Yeah, so it's a decent card. I mean, I like the Nunes Shevchenko fight. I really like the first fight. That's a fun fight. But it's just not a marquee fight. You know what I mean? It's a good fight. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not I don't hear that buzz about that fight. You know what I mean? And then I think
seems like it would be a great Fox Network card.
Yeah, and then Romero Whitaker is a really fun fight, but again, you're not going to get a lot of chatter because the biggest chatter you're going to get out of those two guys are going to be both of them taking shots at Bisping. Let's be honest. You know what I mean? Right. They're going to talk about Bisping, how he's not defending the title, and blah 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 blah. But they're not going to talk about each other. They're very respectful that way. Whitaker is like a super respectful guy.
Can Romero close the distance and get in close enough to utilize that high level wrestling?
Yeah. So it's a fun fight, don't get me wrong. And then you got Anthony Pettis and Jim Miller. That's an interesting fight. Jim Miller is always exciting. Anthony Pettis going back to lightweight, but I don't know, man. I think that card, it's like, it's not a bad card, but it's just like, is it a $59.99 card? Right. Is it a pay-per-view card? That's where it kind of comes.
I don't think so. I mean, like, just to be honest, I mean, I think that ship sailed with the Cerrone, Robbie Lawler fight, because that was the one that kind of pushed it over to really justify it. But I mean, if you're a fan and you get every pay-per-view, I mean, you're definitely going to want to see this one. And I mean, there are fights on there that could really be game changers for sure. I mean, not to take anything away from the athletes that are on there for sure. It's a great set of fights, but like you said, $59.99, the price.
Yeah. Well, when you push it with five, like
steep.
it's one of the benefits that the UFC has is that when you do it as a whole card for 5 fights, and you can justify it because it's 5 fights. Like, you may not be that, like, because ultimately pay-per-view business, in my opinion, is always comes down to the main event. Is that really what's going to push you over the edge? Right. UFC 214. We just had Chris Cyborg gets a new opponent. She's fighting Tanya Evinger now instead of me. Anderson. Now, I like that fight. But ultimately, we were all tuning in for Jones Cormier. I mean, let's be honest. You know what I mean? Like, I love Jimmy Manoa and Volkan Ozdemir and all the other fights that are taking place. But ultimately, I was gonna watch that card. If I'm a fan, I'm watching that card for Jones Cormier.
If there's one fight on that card, I would still buy that card for $60 to watch those two guys.
Exactly.
Fight. And
so that's ultimately what it comes down to. But the other way you can justify it is if you're not that into the main event. Like, I like Noon Shevchenko very much. I like that fight very much. But am I going to pay $60 just for that fight? No. But for the other 4 fights, Verdum Overeem, Miller Pettis, Cowboy and Lawler, and then you got, Lawler, Romero and Whitaker, I would pay for that at that point. But when you start dropping fights off there.
You know what? Amanda is coached by Dean Thomas, who is a good friend of mine. So I'm going to say support that event. I think it's a tremendous buy, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a good card. It's just one of those things, like I said, when you start pricing the pay-per-view, is it worth, and then, because at the end of the month, that's one of the big things about pay-per-view. I also heard with buyers, with a lot of the casual audiences, that you don't want to put 2 pay-per-views in the same month because that gets pretty expensive. Your cable bill comes out, it's an extra $60 higher.
Yeah.
Jones Cormier is in July as well.
Yeah.
So now you're asking people to plunk down $120 if they want both those cards. And that's, again, where you start getting in that dicey area. Are people willing to pay that extra money to get both cards? Because I heard that was a big argument with the whole Mayweather-McGregor thing, and Canelo Triple G was technically they're in different months. Mayweather McGregor's in August, Triple G and Canelo's in September, so they may not experience as much of a drop-off, meaning Canelo and Triple G, because people will think this is on my August bill, Canelo Triple G's on my September bill, I can justify it a little bit more. So it does make sense. When things start coming together like that, it starts to make sense why, it's not, why people spend the money the way they do on pay-per-view.
Yeah, we spent money on Bellator this weekend.
Yes, we did.
That's legit. That was the first ever Bellator pay-per-view I've ever paid for.
Yeah, it was, I had a good time watching it. It was kind of fun just to sit back and watch it as a fan, at that point, I was still at Fox Sports. So, but it was interesting, it was fun. One of the things I love
about a company guy all the way to the end, man.
One of the things I loved about the pay-per-view, and I had the conversation with somebody on Twitter about this yesterday. One thing I do like about the pay-per-view is they made it feel different than a typical Bellator card. Like, it felt bigger.
Well, it felt bigger because I thought they did the broadcast. The presentation was on point, man. And that's a little bit of what the UFC has scaled back, even with the addition of some of the fighters at the broadcast table, which I really like. I think, giving guys a shot to do stuff during their career and post-career is definitely the right way to go for certain athletes. But the fight atmosphere, that big, I think, you would almost lean it more towards professional wrestling at that point? If you had to split between what you might call like quote unquote real sports or professional wrestling presentation, Pride had a more professional wrestling presentation. UFC has always followed the boxing model. Somewhere in the middle is where their game kind of meets too, you know, between boxing and pro wrestling. But the UFC is really, with Fox and with the Reebok thing, they've really cleaned everything up and it's streamlined out so much, and you haven't noticed it because it's happened so slow. But you did notice it after you saw the Bellator presentation, in my opinion, because, hearing Goldie back, on all the message boards leading up to his firing or non-contract renewal, whatever you want to call it, that is what it was. He didn't get fired. Everybody was like, Goldie this, and, giving him a hard time on the underground. And then as soon as he's let go, he's like a cult hero. Yeah. Which I think he's an important guy for mixed martial arts. It's not that old. The business that we all love is not that old. The sport, I think, when you have somebody that's been the voice of something for so long, just to get rid of him and think there's no value there is, that's a little fast. I think Bellator picked up a nice find in Mike Goldberg.
Yeah, I said this yesterday. I was actually talking to Chael Sonnen's manager yesterday. And he was talking about Goldie, and he asked me what I thought of the pay-per-view and stuff, and I said I enjoyed it. And I said, when they hired Goldberg, my first instinct was, I don't know if I really, Goldie, I like Goldie very much as a person, but as a commentator, he had mistakes, let's be honest. He had mistakes,
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Well, anytime you talk for that length of time, you're going to say some stuff eventually that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, but even I admit, when I heard the voice on the pay-per-view,
right,
I got it. I got why it made sense.
Because felt like you're home again, right?
Because he does have that voice. There's a familiarity there with him, Mauro Ranallo, same way.
It's cool to hear them on the same broadcast, not together, but
it was weird. It was weird at first because at first I was like, I don't know if I really get it. But then when I heard it, and I was like, that's the voice you know. Mm-hmm. That is the voice you know of UFC, of mixed martial arts. That is a familiar voice. Goldie does it. And so when I heard it, I was like, now it makes sense to me because you have to have it. When it was in that moment, when it was in that pay-per-view, it made sense to me why that move was the right move for Bellator, because there is a familiarity there, and they've built their own product, the pay-per-view, the one thing I love about Bellator is their entrances. I love that they really do the entrances up big. Like, it feels like a big event when they walk out with those screens and everything. Like, it really looks cool.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
More of a pro wrestling feel, and I admit I'm a pro wrestling guy. You know what I mean? I like that kind of, a little bit more glitz and glamour to it than.
But when did that become like a terrible, terrible thing?
Well, the UFC used to do it. The UFC used to do it back in the day. Like, if you go back and watch Ken Shamrock and Tito Ortiz at UFC 40, they did those big flashy entrances, and I enjoyed it. But then they switched to that more traditional boxing entrance, and they're still
I like the locker room walkout, but I mean, like, you could, if certain guys want to do a little something more, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I do think it should be based on the fighter. Not everybody should be pushed to do a Vegas show on the way out.
There's a level of excitement. Like, let's just say, for instance, when Conor McGregor walks out, you know what I mean? Like, he walks out, and you see him walking from the back, and you hear that, Sinead O'Connor song fade into the Notorious B.I.G. song, and it's a really, really cool moment. But I think you could still do that on a bigger stage. I mean, think about when Fedor walked out. You know what I mean? They had that Russian music just kind of like drolling through the arena, and you don't see Fedor, and then boom, he's there on the stage. Like, there's something cool about that. I admit, I like the Pride entrances. I like the WWE type entrances.
Well, even Goldberg from like pro wrestling, that's almost like the model. You know what I mean? Yeah. That I guess we're trying to describe. Like where he starts out in the backstage. The over dramatic as he leaves the locker room could go. Yeah. Like, are you that mad as you leave the locker room? Like, you're that pissed off? Like, has someone been keeping Bill Goldberg in there against his will for like months on end? Because why are you so mad, man?
Yeah.
He rips the door open. But what I'm getting to is like, all the sparkler. You go stand in like, that huge sparkler mess, whatever that thing's called. And he's in the fountain and he's like, whatever. Listen, like I said, it's not for everybody, but there could be certain aspects of that the UFC is missing out on slightly by mainlining it so much. Because I feel like, football's got some show, man. They come out of the tunnel and
Yeah. Well, there's, a lot of people argue with me on this, but I've said this for many years. Everyone wants to compare mixed martial arts to boxing because they're two combat sports. But I've said forever, there's much more correlation between mixed martial arts and pro wrestling than there is boxing. I mean, yes, boxing is two guys punching each other. MMA is two guys punching each other, two girls punching each other, whatever. But that to me is really where it ends. I think MMA stands out much more personality wise, production wise with pro wrestling, much closer to WWE than it ever will be to a boxing promotion kind of thing. And if you think about it, when you think about boxing, like you ultimately think about the fight, but you never really talk about much else. Like MMA is very much like WWE. We talk about the commentators. Yeah. We talk about the ring announcer. We talk about the ring girls. We talk about the entrances. We talk about the walkout songs.
Yeah.
That never happens in boxing. I've been watching boxing for most of my natural life. I've never once heard, man, I love that walkout song that Evander Holyfield walked out to. No one does that. And so,
if I had to think like Mike Tyson, did Mike Tyson come out to a specific song each time?
I couldn't tell you. I had no idea. You know what I mean? That's the thing. And then you think about like the guys like Daniel Cormier who embrace it, who's like, he's a big like WWE fan. You know what I mean? With him and like Seth Rollins. I know he loves Bobby Roode and NXT. And you think about those big.
Oh my God. You talk about an entrance. Yeah. That is like.
It's my favorite.
It's over the top.
It's my favorite.
It's so much. Like, it's a lot to take in. You're like, what the it's happening right. It is epic, man, because I didn't expect it.
Yeah,
and then
it's amazing.
It was a couple months ago, and I saw it. I think I called you, and I was like, what's happening with this guy?
It's amazing. It's amazing. So
that was appropriate.
Little NWO. But I like that. I like the over the top production. I like the over the top the over the top kind of entrances. And like I said, in MMA, we are much more in tune with things that aren't necessarily about the fight. You know what I mean? Like I said, name another sport where people are so talkative about the announcers, the commentators, where we sit there and analyze the commentators. We talk about, man, is Dominic Cruz better than Brian Stan? Is Brian Stan better than Rogan? Is Rogan better than everybody?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in boxing. It happens in pro wrestling. People all the time talk about, man, I loved Morrow's voice, or Michael Cole's this, or Michael Cole's that, or I really like, Jerry the King Lawler. That's pro wrestling is much closer to
is
the
UFC.
Is it me,
or has Morrow toned it down a little bit?
A little bit.
I think it sounds great.
No, he's great.
I used to be borderline sometimes, and I like him as a person and as a broadcaster and everything. So, I mean, this is a compliment. I think there was a time when it was more over the top.
Yeah.
Remember his podcast? I almost forgot about his podcast.
Yeah.
He was like one of the first guys, right? Was he the first MMA podcast? He had to be one of the first.
I don't know. I one of the maybe, I don't know. There's a lot of podcasters that were early on, but I don't know. I'd have to look. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, like on a regular basis. He's got to be like one of the early pioneers for sure. But it was cool because that was always the interesting. You would never think you would see those two guys, Mike Goldberg and Mauro Ranallo, in the same place.
Yeah,
but
cool.
It was cool how they changed it up too. The question is, in my mind, is going forward, we're told that they're going to share duties. So, I mean, I wonder if there will.
Well, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just guessing, but I think because Mauro's back on WWE programming now. He's doing NXT on Wednesday nights. And then he does Showtime boxing as well for like the bigger boxing cards. So he'll do Mayweather McGregor.
They just do pay-per-views, right?
They do Showtime like Saturday night boxing, like when they do a bigger card. Now it's not on like
is
a monthly
he on
basis.
Saturday night boxing?
Well, he's on the bigger cards. Like they have big cards on Showtime. You know what I mean? Not Showtime pay-per-view, but Showtime. And he'll do those as well. So I imagine that's probably why they did it, because Mauro's so busy with his other gigs that they probably couldn't depend on him to do it every single week when they do those cards. You know what I mean? So Goldberg, I imagine, is going to be like the regular guy, and then Mauro will come in for the bigger cards.
Is that funny? Like, I don't think anybody would have ever guessed that. Like, if you would present that on a platter in front of somebody and say, hey, connect the dots. Who is the main announcer? Like, who's the marquee announcer?
Yeah.
I think most people, just based on UFC alone, would say Mike Goldberg. I'm just saying, like, status-wise.
Well, but yeah.
Is it interesting? Like, right?
It is. Like I said, I like Mauro very much. Mauro's the guy who I think is the best commentator in sports, period. I think he does a tremendous job, and I'm a big Mauro fan. But I think it's good to have that different voice. I think it's good to have different voices. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of what, in my opinion, kind of ran Goldberg ragged for a while there, is because he was kind of the only guy for a long time. And
he's calling the same fight. How many times can you say, like, oh my God, it's all, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
so like
honestly.
then they brought in Anik, and they did some different things like that, because you're doing so many cards. Now, Bellator doesn't do as many cards as the UFC does, but still, when you have that bigger fight card atmosphere, if they do another big card later this year, maybe November, December, you bring Mauro back and have him do the big card, and you have Goldberg fill in for the other spots, like the Benson Henderson card coming up, and Roy Nelson, those guys are, the guys that you're familiar with, Mike Goldberg, you know what I mean? So, and then you bring in Mauro for those, 4, 5, 6 events a year, the bigger events, the pay-per-views, or, just the bigger marquee cards, things like that. It's good. I think it's good to have different voices and something that everybody enjoys. Cause I like hearing Mauro, but then, like I said, I didn't realize how much it would bring familiarity to the broadcast until I heard Goldberg. I was really like, in that moment, I was like, wow, it sounds like a broadcast that I know. Sounds like home again.
Yeah, and I thought that the product was not exactly as good as the broadcast.
No, I mean,
it had the potential to be. The athletes were there. I mean, my big fight, I think I was excited for the debut of Aaron Pico.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I want to give Brendan Schaub a shout out. I thought Schaub did a great job.
He did.
I thought he was the most important part of that whole desk. Who else? Josh Thompson.
Yeah.
And who was the other straight guy?
It was Goldberg, and then
Goldberg,
and
right?
Mauro at the beginning. Mauro was there for the Spike broadcast, and then it was Mike Goldberg, and during the pay-per-view.
Yeah, Schaub was clutch. He kept everything loose.
He did. He's really good at that. He's really become a great voice in the industry. Like, he's done a tremendous job of building himself into becoming a real voice in the industry.
I didn't know he was going to do that. Kind of took me off guard. I saw a video of him. They did a cool piece. Was it Douglas Lima? I think it was him. No, it was Lorenz Larkin. They went out to dinner, and it was this cool dinner thing. It's him and Schaub, and they just had like a dinner conversation. They were eating, and it was the coolest, kind of get to know you, kind of interview leading up to the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But he did a great job. And that's the little stuff like that I think that Bellator is going to score big points with the production team of Spike and having, those big Hollywood dollars and pockets to reach into.
Yeah, I agree.
Production value.
I agree. Also, and we should probably get to the interview, because Sunday night was another card of the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Lee and Michael Chiesa had a great fight. Maybe a bit of a controversial ending.
A lot of controversy.
I guess we'll talk about that. So we should probably talk to Kevin Lee. We had Kevin Lee on the show this week. So let's talk to Kevin Lee, and then we'll talk about that card and kind of, what actually unfolded.
All right, here's Damon. You can follow us on Twitter at Jeremy Loper, at Damon Martin, and Damon Martin one-on-one with Kevin Lee.
Yo, what's going on, brother?
Kevin, how are you, man? Congratulations. I can hear you fine, man. Congratulations on an amazing victory.
Oh, what's going on, my baby? Thank you for it.
So, Kevin, I gotta say, man, we talked before the fight a couple of times, and I know you were ready for a 5-round war. Was there a part of you that was still surprised it went that quickly?
Yeah, and a little bit disappointed too. That's the first thing I said to Ken Flo is he said I was disappointed in Mario. I said I'm disappointed in Mike. I thought he was going to put up a little bit better of a fight. But at the same time, I got to take what he gives me. And, every team approaches the same way once I'm in there. You stay humble during the fight. You have to, you got to take him out when he gives it to you. So I went out there, I did my job, and it's on to the next, and the next won't be no different.
Yeah, there's a million ways you can win a fight, but when you go up against another submission specialist, so to speak, I mean, obviously you're both skilled in all areas, but when you go up against another guy so well known for submissions, does it add a little extra something that you submitted him? I mean, does that kind of add a little extra feather in your cap a little bit?
I guess, but no, not really, because if I get anybody, if I'm on anybody's back, I'm gonna finish them. That's just where my offense shines. I just do, and I think guys even underestimate that. I think he underestimated that. Once they feel my strength, once they feel my power, once they feel my wrestling and my control, and that's really one of the areas that I've really been highlighting these past couple camps. Once they feel that, it's a little bit different than anybody else in the world. So, he might be a submission specialist, but like you said, I'm a black belt in MMA, so it don't matter to me. I've tapped out many black belts already, so. It really, once you get in there, everything is everything,
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and talk about the ending of the fight, of course. Now, because, you were asked this question on the night of the fight. Everyone was curious about, did Yamasaki stop it early? Should it have gone? All those things. Now, it's different in the moment, but now that I'm sure you've had a chance to go back and rewatch it. What are your thoughts now here we sit a couple days after the fight?
Yeah, I've seen it, and I mean, it's no controversy to it. He was out. When you watch the replay, the rules of the fight are defend yourself at all times. When he stopped fighting the hands, he stopped defending himself. And, you know, it waiting for me to burn my arms out, that's not a defense, you know. That's not a, you know, when you relax, you know, that's not a defense. You have to intelligently, and even if he was, he should have gave a thumbs up to the ref. But the man was out. There's nothing that, you know, and people want to compare it to like the Justine Kish submission earlier in that. But it's two different chokes, you know, just because of a rear naked choke. You know, I can explain like the finer points of jiu-jitsu to people, but, you know, for the most part, they won't get it. You know, if you just look, and you can even look at the pictures and just look at where our elbow is placed, you know. Felice's elbow is on the outside of her body, so she's choking with the front part of her forearm against the front part of the neck, which is just a pain choke, you know. That can be toughed out. You know, the choke that I applied, you know, the elbow's right in the center. There's no toughing that out, you know what I mean? And I even said it before the fight. Mike is extremely mentally tough, so he's got that championship mindset. And I don't even know if he knew that he went out, but as soon as he woke up, he was still ready to fight. He was still ready to win. And I think that's what frustrated him. And, you know, I think he even went back, watched the film, and was like, oh, yeah, you know, there was nothing he was going to do about that. He was going to go out one way or another. So, you know, he had the championship mindset. You know, he's one of those guys, you know, you knock him out, and he's going to be fighting the ref. You know, he's still going to be trying to win, even though his body's going to give up on him. And I said that before the fight, and I say it again afterwards. So, you know, I took him out physically, and there's nothing he could do about it. There was no controversy to me.
Yeah. When you go through that and you have everyone asking about that, I mean, you know, as you said, you weren't, there was no controversy. You weren't upset at the referee. You were upset, you know, Michael didn't put on a better fight. But with that being said, you know, because there were questions, does it bum you out that people are even talking about it when we should be talking about you just beat the number 6 fighter in the world, and now you seem like, you know, basically one of the 4 guys right now, one of the top 4 kind of lightweights in the world right now?
You know, people are going to try and discredit me at every turn, you know what I mean? They're going to try and do their best, you know. Even if you take that away, they still don't, you know, the best thing to happen for Mike in this fight was me to make a stupid mistake, and I did that, you know, and I fell and actually busted up my knee pretty good. So, you know, and I still won even with a busted knee and lifted him, you know. So, I mean, I dominated the fight from bell to whistle, I thought. You know, I stayed on my toes. I kept the distance real well. You know, I don't know. I don't see what people, if you want to, like I said, if you want to do it again, like, it would be easy money, I'll do it. But, you know, I don't really see what people are asking for. You know, the only thing that bothers me is that you have people like Kinflo, or some of these other guys, like, for them to come out and say, and for Kenny Florian, I think he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, like, he understands, you know, it was still 45 seconds left in the round, you know, it wasn't like the round was over. It wasn't like it was like right at the last second. You know, there was no squeeze there, you know, jiu-jitsu isn't about the strength, you know, it isn't about the you know, my arms aren't gonna burn out, you know what I mean? It's the meaty part of my arm against the soft part of his neck. It's nothing that you can do to tough it out. I was just going to choke him for another 45 seconds. So for Ken Flo to come out and say that, that they kind of ruined the win, it's like, you know, it doesn't make any sense to me. I didn't get it. I thought it was just trying to discredit me, but, you know, folks are going to do that anyway. They're going to do what they're going to do, whatever.
Yeah. Well, with that said, you know, I know you said after the fight, you even said in your post-fight interview, Kevin, that, you know, you'll take the rematch with Michael. You know, it's easy money, but it was a first-round submission. The fight is over. I mean, just being honest, like, you're moved on from the fight, right? Like, you're not really actually thinking about a rematch.
No. Yeah. I'm already moving on to bigger and better. You know, that's one thing about me. I love a challenge. So that's why I'm asking for these cover fights. You know, I'm asking for guys like Khabib. You know, I'm asking for them. You don't hear about them asking for me. You know, I'm asking for a challenge. I want a challenge, and I want to fight somebody like Khabib that I feel can really pose a good threat and a good challenge. You know, people want to see me and Tony now, but, you know, I mean, Tony's a good fight too. I'll take it, but, you know, I think Khabib's a bigger challenge of the deal, and you know, that's the one that I'm pushing for. So, you know, you ask him, he gonna want to fight Nate Diaz, or he gonna want to fight, you know, somebody coming off their debut or something. You know, he gonna want an easy fight. I think I'm out there. I want the challenge. Regardless, the UFC is gonna come to Detroit later on this year, and it's gonna be a huge fight. It's gonna be a huge fight, not only for me but for the sport in general. And it don't really matter who's standing across from me.
Yeah. So with that said, let me ask you about that post-fight interaction with Tony Ferguson, because it got kind of crazy and everyone was talking about it. I say this all the time, Kevin. I say, make the most of your opportunities. When that microphone's in front of your face or the camera's in front of your face, make the most of your opportunities. Now, I know, I'm not saying you went in with a plan by any stretch of the imagination, but you got to imagine that ended up playing well because everyone was talking about that afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, because I just keep it real with him, like, I just told him what I thought and what he was, he was playing on reporters. I'm trying to help him out. I'm trying to help out Fox here. If Fox want a real fighter who can fight and report and actually, we'll actually do some homework. Or I don't know, maybe the man just spent too much time down in South Carolina and that weed's just too good because I don't know what the fuck he was talking about. I mean. Yeah, I didn't really understand what he was saying. I didn't understand what he saw. I honestly just feel like, and not even with him. I mean, it's a couple of these guys that I've gone back and forth with. They just not that smart. I guess I didn't think that shit was true about MMA fighters being stupid, but I've bumped into a lot of stupid ones, and I think Tony's right there up amongst them.
Yeah. Would you, with the hype, I know you mentioned it, you'd be open. It sounds like you'd be open to it, but would you be open to Tony as the opponent? Because now people are kind of buzzing about that a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I like that one too. I mean, I'm trying to do what's best for all parties here. I thought they were going to put together Tony and Barboza to fight for like an interim title or something, and then I didn't see the point in running back Tony and Khabib again for the fourth or fifth time. And obviously these two men don't want to fight each other, or they're just not destined to fight. I don't know how they're going to get people hyped up about that fight again. It seems like we just did it. It seemed like it just didn't happen. So I don't see how you can sell the tickets and, promise people that they're going to show up and, people are going to buy airfare and all that. And, it already fell through 3-4 times. So I'm trying to look out what's best for everybody. I thought they were going to do Tony and Barboza, do me and Khabib. That sounds like it's a good plan. But, hey, if the folks want to shake and move, I'm down with that too.
Yeah. Now, I know you said you had a little bit of a knee issue. My question, kind of a two-part question. How is the knee? And I assume at this point, the way you're talking, December in Detroit is when you want to fight next. Like, you want to basically wait for that fight in Detroit, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm taking a risk regardless. I'm going to go back. I'm going to probably help out Mayweather for this McGregor fight anyway, make a little bit of change on that side. I'm actually right right now, too. I'm actually sitting with a realtor now. So, so I got some things I'm going to do for the rest of the summer. But as soon as my birthday's over in September, I'll be 25 years old. I said I'm going to be a world champion at 25, and that's where I'm going to.
Yeah. So now with that being said, Kevin, one of the things that, that affects you now because where you're at in this division, I had this conversation with Edson Barboza a couple days ago, is that the lightweight division, the downside is right now is we are kind of in a holding pattern with Conor fighting Mayweather. Now, there's been a lot of split, discussion, is Conor coming back? Do you think he'd really come back after making that payday? And a lot of people are frustrated. Now you're in that conversation because obviously beating Michael Chiesa, 5-5 win streak, all the things you're doing, it seems like you're right there. What is your opinion on the status of the lightweight division, especially when it comes to the title right now, because you're in that race?
Yeah, I mean, it's odd, it is odd, I will say that. It would have been better if Khabib had just showed up in March and made an interim title happen. That way, we can have somebody defend some type of title. It is odd, but, at the same time, I think the UFC is I think the UFC is in like that, and I said even before the fight, it's in that next, in that breaking point. And I think after this Mayweather and McGregor fight, it's really going to go into a new genre. And, maybe they will open up that 165 division or they'll open up an interim title. I mean, they really got no other choice. McGregor, even if he does come back, he ain't coming back no time soon to defend that title. And we've already had enough stagnation at 155 for so many years. You had Anthony Pettis that was out for a long time sitting on the belt. You had all those rematches with Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar fought the only 3 guys within like 3 years or something like that. So, the lightweight division, because it's so stacked and there's so many guys, it keeps happening where, there's so much stagnation going on. And I think people are kind of sick of it. So, people in the division, we all kind of sick of it. So, I think opening up the 165 division is definitely the way to go. I really don't see no downside to it. if anything, that just gives us more opportunities, more top 10 guys, more championship level fights, and more championships. So, that's what I'm kind of looking forward to. I think they're going to make an interim title either way, but I think the 165 title sounds more feasible.
Yeah. But real quick, before I get you out of here, Kevin, I want to ask you about this, because one of the things I noticed, and I tweeted this on Sunday night, and I'll say it to you right now, is that you called out Khabib numerous times. Now, you told me that before the fight, so we knew this was coming. But my question is this. You may be one of the first people in history to call out Khabib. You know that has not happened very often, and a lot of people are, we're kind of taken back by that. Kind of a two-part question. Why, what is it about this matchup that you like so much, and how confident are you in defeating Khabib Nurmagomedov, handing him his first loss?
Again, because people think he's such a monster, and I go, people afraid of the book. I want to find him, you know what I mean? I want to find that man. So, if people think it's Khabib, then I'm going to keep chasing after the man, Like you said, nobody calls him out, but he don't call out a tough fight either. He's calling out guys, it would be easier and it would be smarter for me to call out somebody like Nate Diaz, to do the Tony Ferguson route, to call out somebody who's obviously going to be an easy fight with a lot of losses. Somebody like Nate Diaz already beat 12 times, all by the same game plan, all by the same method. It's an easy win, but Khabib is somebody, he's undefeated. Obviously, nobody has been able to crack that code yet. And, I'm down to do that. I'm down to be that one. So, that's what intrigues me about the fight game. That's what kind of gets me up and gets me motivated even more so than chasing championships. I'd rather have those kind of fights, the tough fights where every day I get up and I'm a little bit more motivated by it. But these guys they don't think the same way. They don't have the same mindset. They rather fight, like I said, you rather fight somebody that's coming in the UFC debut or somebody with double-digit losses. You rather fight a Michael Johnson before he fights a real fight. So yeah. I mean, I guess more power to the man. I guess he's making it happen. He's fooling a lot of stupid people that buy into that hype. So let him have it.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate the time again, man. Congratulations on an amazing victory. Enjoy a little downtime, man. And like I said, hope to see you in Detroit in December.
Oh, my man. You like the build over that, boy. Don't wait on me.
I love it. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the time, buddy.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Interesting. I don't know how he doesn't see that was an early stoppage.
It's a weird. I watched that replay so many times of, Michael Chiesa fighting the choke, and then his arms go down for just a brief second, and then that's when Yamasaki stopped it. And Michael popped right back up. It's such a weird sequence. It
is the defense for that, though.
I understand, the whole you got to be fighting the choke. You got to be fighting the choke. And in that one brief second, Chiesa wasn't fighting the choke. His arms did kind of go down for a second, and you're like, what is he doing? But it was stopped so quickly. If you watch it on slow-mo, it's much easier to justify because it looks like his arms go limp for a second. But Yamasaki was so quick to stop it in that moment as opposed to just letting it go for maybe 2-3 more seconds to find out if he was really out. And the thing, like I said, and I said this to Kevin, and I say it now, I think the biggest problem isn't that, was it early, was it not early? I think the biggest problem is that we're even talking about it because we should be talking about Kevin Lee going out there and having a tremendous performance and tapping out the number 6 guy in the world and making kind of a statement win for him to put him into the top 10. I think that's the sucky part about this, and that's the problem with bad refereeing sometimes is that we talk about that more than we talk about the result when it's a situation like this where if it just gone on maybe 3 more seconds, we would have no question and we'd be just praising Kevin Lee.
Coming back and making a tremendous comeback from adversity at the end of the first round in a terrible position, comes back, second round, looks terrific, ends up winning the fight, something else. But you leave so many questions, and then the evading of not wanting to fight him in a rematch. I think this situation's too murky to be all like whatevs about. I think you got to be more direct, take it head on. I think you got to kind of take your lashings as far as the public goes, because the public's going to kill you over that. And you could say, I don't care. I know Tyron Woodley gave him the advice to move on, and he has that unfortunate for Michael Chiesa. He has Kevin Lee has that ability to just be able to walk away right now because he's the winner.
Yeah,
and say,
See, here's the thing. Like, I'm not, when to me, the controversy surrounding Poirier and Alvarez is much more in tune with doing a rematch because the way that ended with the DQ, you know what I mean? Like, Poirier was pouring on the punishment. Alvarez has a tremendous comeback and he hits him with the illegal knees, and clearly they were illegal. There's no question about they were illegal. Right. And I have no problem with Dustin Poirier not being allowed to continue. They do a rematch in that, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? Like, it was a very suspect ending. In my opinion, it still should have been a DQ, but nevertheless, point is, I'm fine with that rematch. With this one, what we're really questioning is, was it stopped too early? Would Chiesa have fought back? I don't know. It looked like the choke was in pretty deep, but that's what Yamasaki has robbed us of. But do I think they need to run it back immediately? No. I'm fine if they move on and maybe they rematch down the road. Chiesa gets another win or two.
Bad, man. Dude's going palm to palm. He's shrugging. He was ready to get out. And I love Dana called him Mario Mazzagatti.
That was so funny.
It's ridiculous.
So funny.
I thought it was so hilarious. Because at first I looked at him like, of course. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, it's it is what it is, man. It's like I said, the person I know you should, in a way you feel bad for Michael Chiesa because he didn't get a chance to fight back.
It's his life, man.
But I also feel bad for Kevin Lee. The guy put on a tremendous performance, first round finish over a number 6 guy in the world, big hyped up, all that stuff at the press conference and everything, and then to have it in that way, and now we're talking about Yamasaki more than we're talking about Kevin Lee. And that's the problem. I feel bad for him for that because
I feel worse for Kevin Lee if he felt bad.
Yeah, well,
I feel like Kevin Lee doesn't care. Like, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to him.
But here's the thing.
I think he's just like, whatevs, man. My thing is my thing.
Here's the thing. If you're in his situation, are you supposed to say he was fine and he should have continued? Then you're just taking the win away from yourself.
Joe Lozon.
Yeah, that's true.
How respectful was that guy when he won? I forget who the kid was that
Marcin Held, I think is who it was.
Yeah, and he beat him, and he was like, "Dude, I lost that. Hey, I lost that fight. What do you want me to say? I lost the fight.
Who knows?
But I really won."
I get it, though. I get it. I mean, I get where and Kevin Lee. What I like about Kevin, as I'm sure you heard in the interview, and as I'm sure you've seen on TV and stuff, he's kind of built himself into a bit of a flashy personality.
Sure.
And you know what? I said this on Sunday night, and I'll say it again now. When you have the microphone in front of your face, just like the argument with Tony Ferguson, which was great stuff. Like,
yes.
Take every advantage of what you can in that moment because that's what people, because like I said, I tell fighters this all the time. You have 15 or 25 minutes in the cage, but ultimately people are going to remember what's said before and what's said after as well. You know what I mean? So take advantage of that moment because you can't always have Cub Swanson and Doo Ho Choi. You're not always going to have that super memorable fight that people are going to buzz about afterwards. Sometimes you got to say something in addition to your performance. And I think Kevin Lee absolutely stole the spotlight with that, going after Ferguson and him and Ferguson getting into a back
Oh my God.
forth.
How about suit killer? That's what I'm calling Tony Ferguson. A killer in a suit. Like, this guy's got a suit on. He's sunning Kevin Lee. Like, he's just straight sunning him. And Kevin Lee's like, not happening. What are you trying to do to me right now?
Yeah.
But, he was in a position, when you're at the height of the division, you can do that. And that, honestly, I started questioning a little bit. I'm like, Chiesa and Lee maybe should run it back in Detroit. Because your name then, because if Kevin Lee thinks that he can put a stamp on it, why not put that stamp on it, make some more money, and prepare to fight those guys higher in the division? I mean,
here's the only reason I'm against it, beyond what I said before, is also if you're going to put them in Detroit, if it's going to be a pay-per-view in Detroit, now I have no idea if it's a pay-per-view or if it's just a Fox card or what's going to be in Detroit. I have no idea. But if it ends up being a pay-per-view, Kevin Lee against Chiesa is a good draw. It's a solid fight, but it's not going to draw as much as if Kevin Lee ends up fighting Tony Ferguson or if Kevin Lee ends up fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov because those are bigger names and bigger fights. And I think we're
Do you think he brings heat like that to a card?
To a point. I mean, I think.
Oh, you're saying in Detroit.
In Detroit. It's his hometown. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but I, like I said, I don't have a problem if they run it back at some point. I don't know that I necessarily need to see it tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like I didn't, because if it was a 5-round war, and it was 2 rounds to 2 rounds, and Kevin Lee caught him in that final moment, and Yamasaki screwed up and caught it early, I'd be like, man, that's just egregious. You got to run it back. You know what I mean? You got to run that back. But it was a first-round fight, and for the most part, outside of that early, slip from Kevin Lee where Chiesa got a brief takedown and then it was reversed, it wasn't like it was a long fight. It wasn't like it was a close fight. Now, that's not a dig on Chiesa. I feel bad for Chiesa because if he was really out, because I've seen people get choked out, and I've been choked out. I'm sure you've been choked out too doing jiu-jitsu. you go out for a second or two. You're not just cognizant immediately. You kind of have to like wake up.
You daylight,
and he was up immediately. That's what really did.
Well, he was up immediately. He was explaining the technique to not only the camera later, but to Mario Yamasaki. He was explaining what was happening. He was like, dude, went palm to palm. I was trying to shrug to create room for an explosion and then hoping to end up on top. And he was 100% right. I feel bad for a guy ranked 6th that gets all that taken away. But, hey, that's the game, man. That is the fight game.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then the other thing that happened on that card was obviously Johnny Hendricks missing weight.
Dude, Johnny Hendricks, what's happening, man? I mean, that is not the guy that when Matt Brown was on this podcast that we would talk about, the camp leading up to Matt Brown's fight with Johnny Hendricks, the fights before with Robbie Lawler, you name it. Johnny Hendricks had wars and had a hard time making 170 there. And so they say, hey, you got to go to 185. And he went and talks about how much he loves it. And then he gets there. And now I'm hearing there's like so many unconfirmed things. Have you heard that he was hurt or something was happening?
No, I have not heard anything about any injuries. When I talked to Johnny about 3 weeks out from the fight, he said he was walking around about 212 pounds.
Okay.
And so he's, at that point, that's 30 pounds overweight. But he said, he typically would cut about 20. I think he said he typically cut about 20 pounds during fight week, which, in those days, that means he was already dieting down to like 190. And then cutting 20 pounds to get down to 170, and it was just a brutal cut. And he said, this way, when I'm cutting 20 pounds, it's not nearly as bad because I'm only getting down to 185. But ultimately, you have to know your body, and you have to know your nutrition, and you have to know what you're putting in. If you're walking around at 212 pounds and you can't make 185, now he's not the only guy. I'm quite sure Luke Rockhold walks around at 220 or 210 or whatever. And I'm sure Bisping walks around at 200 pounds or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not, I'm sure Yoel Romero walks around at 205.
Yeah, but those guys are giants.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to, if you're Johnny Hendricks, you're 5'9". You're 5'9", and
he looked really big. I mean,
it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, there's no. I'm not making excuses because there are no more excuses to make for Johnny Hendricks. He has to be responsible for his own body. Now, one of two things is going to happen here: either he makes a dramatic change in his lifestyle and he really gets dieting down, and he convinces us that he's willing to do the work to stay lower in weight, either go back to welterweight or convinces that he can be a shredded 185.
They're going to make him fight Daniel Cormier next.
Or they're going to have to release him. I mean, I don't want to go that route, but I mean, just like what happened to Anthony Johnson. Anthony Johnson missed weight a bunch of times at 170. He went up to 185. He missed his first fight at 185. Remember that when he lost to Vitor?
Well, that was his whole stigma.
And they released him, and he had to go out and win some fights outside the organization. Now, he came back, and obviously, Rumble ended up being a huge beast, and he kind of fixed his problems.
Much younger at the time.
But Hendricks doesn't have that Hendricks does not have that capability. He can't go to 205. He would be so undersized at 205.
Oh my God, the most.
Yeah, and he just got knocked out by Tim Boetsch, and Tim Boetsch is the number 15 guy in the world.
That was tough to see, man. He looked like his little brother in there. And that's no slight. I'm not throwing heat over at Johnny. I'm just saying, man. I was almost scared for him at one point, because he looked. I mean, he looked like a guy that at the gym that hey, you want to go swimming? That's cool. And then he busts off his shirt oh no, you are not dieting at all. You're just eating everything right now because he's still got his muscle mass that you can tell define. I mean, come on, bro. What Mike Dolce? Did you hear him destroy Johnny Hendricks?
Yeah, I did.
It was almost I like Mike Dolce. It was almost too much. I was like, damn, dude.
Well, here's the thing.
But he was right. Every point was right.
Well, the criticism is absolutely fair because the guy's done this his entire career now. And the other reason why it's also fair with Johnny Hendricks is because we've seen him compete tremendously. Look at his fight with George St. Pierre. Look at his fights, as you mentioned, with Robbie Lawler. Look at when he fought Matt. He was in tremendous shape.
Why wouldn't you stick with Dolce? I mean, do you just think you could save money?
Dolce's expensive, and I think that was the original reason of cutting him out.
Because he had that little comment in there. Did you pick up on that? Where he was like, well, guys think they can just go and hook up with a quote unquote personal trainer, nutritionist, for shout outs on Instagram.
Here's the thing. There are nutrition companies out there, and those kind of ready-made meal companies out there that will sponsor a fighter, and they'll give it to him for free because they promote it. Just like he said.
Yeah, we had a guy in town doing that for us.
Yeah, so it's possible. It's absolutely possible. But the problem is that when you're a professional athlete, you got to remember your job your job is not just contained in what you do in the octagon. It's also the lead up to the fight. It's just like when I say about promoting your fight. You know what I mean? It's like being on Twitter, engaging in interviews. There's more to your job than just fighting. As much as a lot of fighters don't want to do that kind of stuff, there is more to it. But this is something that's in your purview. Making weight is part of your job. And if you cannot stop eating or you cannot eat the right things and you cannot get down to weight, that is a big problem. Now, Johnny Hendricks got fined 20% of his purse, which I don't know what his total purse was, but I think somebody put on Twitter, it was like he lost like 20 grand. So how much was that nutritionist going to cost you? You know what I mean? Like if a nutritionist cost you 10 grand, I think that was the rumor.
Is Dolce getting 20 grand a fight?
I heard 10 grand is what I heard. Now I don't know that for a fact. Somebody said.
Sounds right.
Somebody said 10 grand a fight. So what's more worth it to you? Even if he lost that fight, if he lost the fight, got knocked out the same exact way, he still lost 20 grand for not making weight.
Because Dolce's got a bunch of people working for him, too.
Yeah. You still lost 20 grand not making weight. So what's more worth it to you? You know what I mean? Is it worth more to put in 10 grand and pay for a Dolce or a George Lockhart or one of the other nutritionists out there that, consistently get their guys to make weight?
Doesn't he own like a delicious steakhouse, Hendricks?
I think it went out of business.
Why? He put it out of business? He ate it out of business? That's why. I can't make a tempo. I'm feeding myself for the business.
Johnny, you got to leave some steaks for the customers.
Oh, God. Yeah, I wouldn't talk shit if he was here, though.
But yeah, so
that's my problem. You know what? Here's my deal. All right, so you actually did this to me. My wife will do this to me once in a while. Anybody tells me I look great, I will stop doing all the things that I'm doing to look great. And I'm like, I can afford to have a good meal. That meal turns into, it'll be Wednesday and I'm like, it's the weekend. And then all of a sudden I'm back at a spot where I'm like, oh, when you take your shirt off and you just like, yeah, then I'm like Johnny Hendricks against Tim Boach. I'm like, what? Arms look great. I want to see anybody else see me with my shirt off right now. I would bet Damon wouldn't say I look great right now. I think you get to that point, man. Like where maybe Johnny Hendricks. I would love to know what the real deal is because there is a real deal that
there's got to be more.
We'll probably never know. Like tiptoe downstairs, couple ding dongs. Yeah. We don't know. Hostess cupcakes are fucking delicious, man.
Yeah, they are. They're hard to resist.
You imagine because he's got kids. That's why it's so hard for me because they're like always like my wife's like, oh, they're gonna have some little Debbies. I'm like, I'm about to fucking eat that box. I will kill it right now.
Give me all that little Debbies.
It's like it's terrible. I mean, it's like it's so good, but like I'm an adult. I'm like I have willpower over I quit drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
I don't drink alcohol. I have almost, 10 years. Fucking cannot quit the little Debbies. Like I'm all over them, man.
Food's an addiction, man. It is. I mean, as a guy who's struggled with weight his entire life, I understand it, man. It's a thing. And here's the thing. And that's where it comes down to it. Johnny Hendricks is like, his job is to be in a certain condition for a fight. You know what I mean? Like that's not your job. It's not my job. Doesn't mean we shouldn't eat healthy and be healthier lifestyles, but it's not our job to make weight. It's not our job to step in there and be a certain weight for a fight. It is Johnny Hendricks' job. So he absolutely deserves the criticism he's getting right now because it's his job to make weight.
I told Matt Brown one time in support I was going to cut weight with him. Midway through, I was like, fuck that. I was like, I'm still going to support you, though.
I still support you. I'm just not going to sit in a sauna with you. Sorry.
I was just like, I'm in over my head.
It's too much.
I can't go to work. This guy's got to fight. I can't. I'm like worried about going to talk on the radio. You kidding me?
I can't do it.
My mouth's going to be dry tomorrow. I can't do this. All right, guys. Well, we got
one more interview this week, and then because we got Edson Barboza to talk to.
Yeah. But I wanted to say, we're going to be back after the holiday. Yes. So after the holiday, you can expect us on a very regular basis. Things are going to kind of get a little screwed up. I'm going to go to New Orleans.
Yes.
But we'll be back, and this thing is going to be a lot of fun. If you guys want to reach us and send us any kind of email or anything like that, you can send it to @Jeremy Loper or @Damon Martin on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. I guess you're listening to this right now on SoundCloud.
And
we'll eventually make it over to iTunes.
We're going to be on iTunes. We're going to be on YouTube. So I'm going to put it up on YouTube. So we're going to have it everywhere. So, but yeah, we got one more interview to get to today. Lightweight contender Edson Barboza. He called me up the other day. He's, kind of, he's been sitting on the sidelines waiting to hear what's going on. So he wanted to weigh in on Chiesa Lee, and he also wanted to talk about Conor McGregor a little bit, as I think everyone in the lightweight division does these days. So, let's talk to Edson Barboza, see what he has to say, talk about, when he's coming back and what he wants next. I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me as always.
No problem, man. It's my pleasure.
So how is everything? I'm sure you've been watching the fights and keeping busy in the gym.
Yes, definitely. I was stood a lot, watch a lot of fights. I was stay busy, stay in shape, like always.
Has it been tough, kind of waiting for word on your next fight, or did you kind of expect a little bit of a delay?
Sorry?
I said, are you a little sad being on the sidelines this long? Were you hoping to book a fight before now?
Yeah, definitely. I was a little bit sad, but I have a little injury in my left shoulder. I was take care with my shoulder, but I need a couple more weeks to be 100%, and definitely I'm a little sad. And I hope I talked to my wife. Said, man, I think I want to try the 3 fights this year, but I think I can't do this right now. Just 2. I was a little bit sad about that.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Edson, the lightweight division has been, we're kind of in a holding pattern right now with Conor McGregor out of action. We got Tony Ferguson, Khabib, yourself, and now Kevin Lee. Let me ask you first, what did you think of that Kevin Lee Michael Chiesa fight last night?
Yeah, that's a little confused fight, I think that the referee wrong stop the fight he's not stop the fight in the right time, but I think that's the referee problem. I don't know, I think this guy have to fight again. I think so. That's my opinion, but everybody expect a really good fight. I was watching. I hope do 5 rounds, but finish the first round. I think everybody a little bit sad about the fight,
Yeah. Were you surprised that Kevin Lee was able to get that position so early in the first round?
Of course not. Man, he's a top 15 fight in the lightweight division, Everybody's good everywhere. Definitely, I'm not surprised, He's definitely good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling, good strike. I think that especially this division, I think that's the best division in UFC, Everybody's really good everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, afterwards, Kevin Lee wanted, he called out Khabib Nurmagomedov, and then obviously Tony Ferguson, mentioned you by name. I know you've been asking for the Tony Ferguson rematch for a little while. So, what are your thoughts on what comes next for you, and what do you think about where you stand in this division right now?
Yeah, I'm number 4 in the rank. I was my last 2 fights. I fought somebody behind me. In the rank. And right now I have 3 guys in front of me. Khabib, Ferguson, and Eddie. Eddie is my training partner. I definitely not fight with him. He's my friend. I have 2 guys in front of me. I hope you have to give me a chance to fight one of those guys, Khabib or Ferguson.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I think he tried to fight each other, but, man, I'm on the line. I hope to fight with these guys, I worked in UFC for a long time, man. I think I deserve to fight somebody in front of me if I want to get a chance to the title shot.
Yeah. We know that Khabib and Tony have been matched up, I think, 3 different times now, and the fight has fallen apart each and every time. Obviously, you stepped in, for one of those times. Do you feel like at this point that we just need to see something else? It almost feels like this fight just isn't going to happen. Like, we could see you against Khabib or you and Tony in the rematch, but do you feel like it's time to kind of move on from that fight after so many times trying for it to happen?
Yes, man. I think every time I say, I saw this guy talk about fight each other. Say, man, this is gonna happen again. I think this fight never gonna happen. I think UFC see this like me. I hope UFC say, man, when I put somebody in for fight with this guy, I hope these guys, especially Ferguson, doesn't matter. I hope that he puts somebody against me or Lee or somebody in the rank. I think this fight never gonna happen. I don't know why, but I think it's not gonna happen again.
Yeah. If you had your pick, Edson, would you rather fight Tony Ferguson, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter, man. If I fight somebody in front of me, like Khabib or Ferguson, doesn't matter. But if you really ask me, because definitely I prefer fight with Tony because it's a rematch. You know, I have a long story. Everybody knows I got to fight for the for short notice, only 4 weeks training, blah blah blah. It's not excuse, but if you ask me, definitely prefer fight with Tony. But UFC give me Khabib, I was very happy to.
Yeah. So now I want to get your thoughts, Edson, because the lightweight division, as I said, is kind of on hold right now, in a big part because Conor McGregor, he has this boxing match with Floyd Mayweather. Before I ask you about that fight, what are your thoughts on the lightweight division right now? I mean, we haven't had a title defended since November. It looks like it's probably not going to get defended until the end of the year at the earliest. I mean, as a lightweight who wants to fight for the title, how tough is this right now that you want to fight the top guys, but there's still no title on the line?
Yeah, that's funny because I think the lady, he say no for fight with Chris Borg and UFC get the belt, and Conor stay out for a long time. I think he don't worry about UFC, don't worry about the division. He don't respect us, and UFC don't get his belt. That's the I really don't understand why UFC get a belt for the lady and why UFC not get a belt for the Conor. I take the belt with the Conor. I really don't understand. And the guys in front of me, like Tony and Khabib, especially Tony, he's available. He say, I want to fight, but I'm here, I'm in the line, and he say, no, fight with me. I think he say no, And like I said, I think this division don't have the champ right now, I think the belt is still available. I hope UFC put me against somebody, or Khabib fight with the Tony for get a real champ. I think that's a real thing. I think this belt in UFC, Conor is not a real champ.
Yeah. Do you feel like at this point they should just strip him of the title and move on?
Sorry?
Do you think the UFC should take the title from Conor and just move on?
Yes, of course, man. This guy think about boxing. He think about another sport. He don't worry UFC about. He don't worry. He don't think about UFC. He don't think about the old division, man. That's my job. That's my work. UFC put together the belt. UFC put together champ. And I know I deserve the chance. And this guy, on form because of him, he all division stuck. I think, I don't know, that's not good, man. These guys don't respect nobody. Don't respect us. Don't respect UFC, and he's still a champ. That's crazy.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts real quick, Edson, because you've done boxing and kickboxing in your past. What do you think of Conor? What do you think of Conor fighting Floyd Mayweather?
Yeah, I think, man, that's an entertainment fight. Everybody knows Floyd Mayweather and kill him. But, man, that's, like the guy said, that's not a real fight. It's a money fight. Nobody worry about, if Conor gonna win or if Mayweather gonna win. That's a money fight. That's not a real fight. And I really don't think about, I don't keep my focus to think about this fight, because these guys now go there to kick some ass. I'm an MMA fighter. I love box, love to watch box, but these fights happen just because of money. I still fight because I love. I still fight because I want to get a champ. But that's a money fight. I really don't think about this fight. I think, it doesn't matter for me if you want Conor win or Floyd win. I really don't worry about these guys,
Yeah. So I know you said you had a little bit of a shoulder injury, Edson. How soon would you like to fight again?
Yeah, I hope to fight September, I don't know, September, October, November, as soon as possible. As soon as this guy say yes for me, somebody say yes, fight with me, I'm ready, man. I was, I can't wait, man. I can't wait to fight again. Yeah, I hope, really soon.
Yeah, I had an idea. I thought, with Conor out, why not do like a, 4-man tournament? You and Tony, Khabib, and maybe Kevin Lee, you guys fight and crown a new champion that way. I think that would be a good idea.
Imagine it, bro. I think that's the best idea, my friend. I think that's the best idea. I was fight tournament, like a 8 fightings, a lot in Muay Thai, like a 3 fight in the same night. I lose just one Grand Prix in the final, but I love fight Grand Prix. I think that's going to be different for UFC. I think everybody want to see this. Imagine, man, I think that best idea, like a tournament, like 8 fighters or 4 fights to get the real champ. I think this division deserves the real champ.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Edson, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. I appreciate the time. Hopefully next time we speak is when you book this fight, and maybe this tournament will work out. I'd love to see it.
Yes, why not? Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Edson. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
Bye-bye.
Funny, Edson Barboza, what a great guy, man. When he used to train at the Armory in Palm Beach Gardens, I
remember that.
I would go watch him, and they had this like crazy little green guy as their mascot. But he was the up and comer, like, hey man, you got to come check this guy out, because they knew I was a karate black belt, and always loved anytime there's a great stand up guy or anybody with just terrific legs, kicks. They're like, you got to come check this out. So I went and, saw him training. I'm just like, my mind was blown. I was like, this dude is going to take people's fucking souls with his legs.
Yeah, his kicks are freaking insane. Like
the stuff that he pulls off. It's not just that he can do it like at the gym, because, there's a lot of people that can do cool stuff at the gym, go to your local Taekwondo school, right? But like when you can do it and take somebody's fucking head off, not just make it look pretty, that's a different level, man.
I've seen a lot of fun knockouts this year. I still think Edson Barboza's knockout over Beneil Dariush, that flying knee, was the sickest knockout of the year. Because I remember I actually was in Kentucky. I'd gone to a Kevin Smith show down in Covington, Kentucky, and I missed the first part of the card. And then I ended up working the card from my hotel room. I stayed in a hotel room down there, and I was working the cards from Brazil. And when that fight came on, I was covering it, and I was in a hotel room, and it's like, 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night, whatever it is, late at night. And when he landed that knee, I literally was like, "Oh!" Yeah. Like I just shouted, and my girlfriend was like, I was like, well, she's like, we're in a hotel, like don't scream, people are going to call like the management. But I was so loud, like it was such a natural, like just a natural reaction when he landed. I was like, "Oh!" You're like JR, by God! Oh my God, he's dead! He's dead! Unbelievable, man. Yeah, the guy's just amazing. And he's one of these guys that you look for to always be world champion. But then you realize, holy shit, at the top of the game, there are all these killers. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you look at Barboza, you look at Ferguson, you look at Khabib, and you look at Kevin Lee. I'm not taking Eddie Alvarez out of the mix because I think he's like right in there at like number 4 or whatever, but obviously we think he's going to rematch Dustin Poirier. But those 4 guys, Kevin Lee doing what he did, and obviously you got Barboza, you got Khabib, you got Tony. I mean, that's a pretty deep list. You know what I mean? Like Conor, when he finally comes back, assuming he does come back, he doesn't exactly have an easy road to walk through at lightweight, man. That's a shark pit. And I like his chances, man. The more and more we get closer to this fight, and everybody calls it such a bullshit production and all this stuff, man. I don't know. There's just something that's in the air that just feels right for an upset. Like it just feels right. Maybe it's just like all these people that are all of a sudden boxing purists. Like, I love these fucking people. Like, I've never seen anybody talk about boxing on YouTube ever. And now all of a sudden we have a million analysts that know everything about everybody, and especially Floyd Mayweather. They are a very specific, they're a professor in Mayweatherisms. Oh, yeah. And so, like, they're going to break it down for you, and they are cocky when they're doing. So, if nothing else, just so those people will lose their shit, I would love. I don't know, man. Like Conor he's so aggressive in this fight in social media. It's so funny. Like you can really see how like there's a team now in place, and like they're showcasing it. The social media aspect of it's so important. Yeah, it's going to be huge, and I think that's still going to be Conor's biggest weapon in this fight is going after Floyd mentally, verbally. And Conor has taken a lot of people out of their heads when they go into a fight with him. And I'm sure Mayweather, everyone's going to say, well, it's Floyd Mayweather. He's one of the best of all time, blah, blah, blah. But dude, there's so many, there's buttons you can press on anybody. And Conor has a way to find them and press them over and over and over and over again. And he'll come at you from so many angles that you wouldn't see coming. Like when he went after, I'll never forget when he went after Rafael dos Anjos for being he called him like a fake Brazilian.
Because he didn't live there.
Yeah,
that's right,
that's such a random thing.
Oh, but it's such a thing.
But who would have thought of that?
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like that's what I'm saying. Like Conor went to that point, and he's like, we went to Brazil, and you had to get a hotel because you don't live there.
All of a sudden, he takes the Brazilian people on his back, and
that's
he's
what
like,
I'm saying.
"Who's that guy not living in your country?"
So Conor has an ability to just do that kind of stuff, and I think that's something Floyd has never dealt with, because everyone with Floyd is always like, I'm going to be the guy to upset Floyd. But Conor's he's going to go after him for the domestic violence stuff. He's going to go after him for the whole 50 Cent, he can't read stuff. He's going to go.
You think he's going to go there?
Oh,
do you think 50 Cent pops up at some point?
Maybe. I don't know. Conor is going to go for the jugular. There is no doubt in my mind. When these two guys finally get together for a press conference or a face-off, whatever, Conor is going to go for the jugular.
All right, man. I love it. I can't wait. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Jeremy Loper. It's Loper, and at Damon Martin, of course. You guys can check out my vlog channel on YouTube. It's Loper and Randy. I got a radio show, same thing. You can find us, just Google it. You can find everything you need to know about us. And Damon Martin, NerdcoreMovement.com. If you guys love TV, love stuff like The Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, all the greatest superhero movies, Damon recaps all of that. If you read his MMA stuff and you think that's sick, wait till you see what he does to your nerd stuff. You're going to love it. And I kind of like him, a self-proclaimed nerd too. I like that.
We're all quietly nerds at heart. I think we all are.
All right, man. Well, this will be the end of the show, and we'll be back here in a week or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.